Good to see you, Scott. My name is Bjørn Eilertsen. I'm the CTO of Milestone Systems. We're here at ISC West 2019. Thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure. Tell me about Milestone's cloud strategy. The cloud is all the buzz now.
Yeah.
And how's Milestone approaching that relative to systems integrators?
Trying to address the buzz. Trying to really be more pragmatic about cloud than I think we've been and others been before. Talking about a strategy to really deconstruct the VMS and try to take a server solution that's been around for a long time and take the relevant services and put them to the cloud, necessarily one by one, but really in a tempo that suits the integrators, because we profoundly believe that it's going to be a hybrid world out there. It's not going to be either or, it's not going to be today or tomorrow, but over the next years, and maybe even more than that, integrators can follow Milestone in a very pragmatic way towards the cloud and being able to service customers with a combination of an on-premise system, relevant set of cloud services, and the compute happening where it makes sense and where the things should be aggregated where it makes sense. I think it's a very pragmatic way of going about it, rather than saying it's all or nothing. And frankly, if customers would like to have that all cloud first experience, they should really go sign up with someone like Oculus, for instance, to go get that number of cameras set up in a cloud first, but really have X-Protect be sitting in a combination of the known on-premise solution and then combined with the services that we're going to be launching over the next seasons. We've got a good trajectory of doing that. Back in 3-4 years ago, we started developing services for the cloud for integrators to do proactive health management of the systems, known as the customer dashboard. And that was sort of the first line of proactive services that we've been launching, and we'll continue down that route. So we call that a deconstructing of the VMS and a very pragmatic way forward to enable hybrid solutions for integrators.
Thank you. Now, artificial intelligence is the buzz.
It's again another buzzword.
Yeah. So what's real, what's not, and how can it be used to advantage for integrators?
What's real is that it's happening. It is happening in this industry and it's happening in other industries. It's going to be maybe one of the biggest revolutions, not necessarily only this industry, but in all industries since the internet frankly came about. However, it's not going to happen in the way you might think. It's going to change the way we do applications on top of and alongside the VMS solutions. And the way Milestone look at it, we started back in 2015. Before that, but we had a real breakthrough with NVIDIA and Intel in 15, 16, trying to move workload from the CPU to the GPU. Now what that has done, not only for the user experience, but also for the compute experience, is that now you can start talking about neural networks, convoluted neural networks, the inner making of machine learning. Now you can argue that is going to be the big change. So what used to be very cumbersome analytics, very difficult to make, will in the future be easier to make, and it will be a lot wider audience of partners being able to produce that. And what Milestone is looking to do is to make that compute experience possible for our solution partners to use. So we're taking that GPU work, that NVIDIA Intel work, we're putting that on top of the X-Protect experience, allowing solution partners to have an API directly into that machine learning capability of NVIDIA and Intel, and by that helping integrators select the right applications to work alongside. If you see in the booth here at ISC West 2019, we've got a whole series of partners working with us. In the future, they'll be able to work on a compute environment on top of the X-Protect environment, in the cloud possibly, to allow the solution partners to be much more feasible, much more simple to install, much more able to scale. And I think that's actually going to address the biggest friction point for integrators. Namely, I think that a lot of the integrators, they understand the concept of using AI-enabled applications alongside a VMS, but it's been too difficult. So we're trying to address that point of friction by enabling a marketplace environment where they're easy to locate the applications, easy to understand how they actually work, and by over time making this compute environment available to our solution partners. And ideally, in a couple of years from now, an integrator would be able to install X-Protect in a hybrid environment as discussed, and then add the relevant applications from a marketplace, and Milestone will then help that compute environment to work alongside. So really, from an integrator's perspective, making that solution sell much easier and much more applicable.
One of the things that I'm hearing from those integrators is that they're afraid that the customer expectations might be ahead of what's real right now.
It's absolutely true, and I think when I was to give a good recommendation is to maybe not always speak about things like face recognition or the other very complicated ways and means of intelligence, but maybe talk about people counting, about shop floor planning, about business optimization, about all of those things that video can do with you and for you, but not necessarily take that leading point of face recognition. It has a tons of challenges, and it's the use cases are so many for how artificial intelligence can be used alongside video. It doesn't all have to be about the face break part. So that's sort of recommendation number one. But then from that also be very aspirational to really think about what business challenges are the customer looking at, and how can video-enabled artificial intelligence help these customers in their business optimization, in surveillance scenarios, but certainly beyond video surveillance. Could be in retail, could be in hospitality, could be in any type of setting where video it's already been mounted. But by adding applications, you can start reusing that infrastructure to address much more, very different questions than what you have in your safety and security discussion. I think that's maybe where integrators should start, by making a proper ROI on already used or already installed equipment, to use that for all the other audiences, be it marketing audience or sales audience or CFO type audience, and really have those conversations in a more broader scale with the customers. And I think from an integrator's point of view, what's happening with the cloud, with the deconstructed environment, with the AI, with the applications, is from an integrator's point of view, they can have much more interesting conversations in surveillance, but certainly beyond surveillance, and start having customers think about how to reuse and leverage the existing infrastructure by adding AI-enabled applications.
Let's move on to cybersecurity. Huge concern. What's Milestone doing specifically to address that, and what's your perspective on the security industry addressing it?
So, security industry perspective, first and foremost, it is no longer a conversation about feature or capability. It is our license to operate. I think that everybody has to come to terms with that. Now, from a Milestone perspective, from the first day, the way the Milestone's architected the system, namely the fact that it's segmented into a client network and a server network, gives us huge advantage over any other supplier in terms of how it's actually been architected. But that's only half of it. We're bringing out new features such as encrypted communication between clients and recording servers, between recording servers and the rest of the network. So I think that's just that's a key part of it. Milestone's been putting in place new assets on the website in terms of how to get engaged with it, how to be notified of a very proactive approach to notification, and more than that on the inside, making it a key priority. You might have noticed that we had a 45% increase in our innovation capacity last year, and a part of that is dedicated for cybersecurity to really change the game around cybersecurity and make sure that all the software is secure by design, secure by deployment, secure by operation. And that, I think, is a key part of what integrators should rely on the manufacturer, not only Milestone, because all manufacturers have to have this really top of mind. One thing not to be forgotten is the whole processing around this. How do you get notified? How do you get notice that you need to update your customers? How do you rely on that? And one key part of Milestone having 3 releases a year, and we started that some years ago, and sometimes it's a challenge for integrators to keep up. But here's an area where it's a real opportunity to make sure they can always rely on having the latest build, the latest version. When companies have, say, 15, 18, 2 years between their releases, cybersecurity becomes a bigger challenge. So having that rapid innovation, having that rapid release cycle really helps integrators to be able to have the latest and greatest and update the customer on a continuous basis. That also, of course, talks the case for maintain your software and keep things up to date. I think that's, as I said, is the license to operate for the integrators and for the manufacturers.